This is DW News Africa. Coming up, who is behind Kenya's growing number of enforced disappearances? Police and politicians say they are not abducting people, but human rights defenders say the officials are peddling empty words that mock the Kenyan citizens who spend years hoping for the return of their loved ones. Also coming up on the show, armed drones are changing the face of modern warfare. We take a look at the Nigerian company convincing the military that locally built drones could be a game changer in the fight against insurgents. Hello there, I am Eddie Micah Jr., and you are welcome to the program. Rights groups say enforced disappearances are once again casting a shadow over Kenya. 2 years after the Gen Z protest over a controversial finance bill, families are still searching for loved ones who never came home. President William Ruto promised the abductions would end, but following last month's anniversary protests, several more people reportedly disappeared. Some have since returned. Others remain missing. DW's Felix Maringa met families still waiting for answers.
Davis Lichuma has long been a tireless defender of basic freedoms in Kenya, and a familiar face holding the country's constitution aloft at civil society protests. Reason enough for him to disappear, it seems, and reappear in hospital. Eyewitnesses say he'd been bundled into the trunk of a car, often used by police during protests in Nairobi's central business district. His family had searched for days at police stations, hospitals, and even morgues, but they found no trace of him. His brother finally heard that Davis was in an emergency medical facility in the city. Davis had sustained injuries to the back, the head, and the knees. His brother Benson recounts the moment when they saw each other again.
He was shivering, and he looked like a madman. He was also totally naked, and since I had my jacket, I took it off and covered him up. But he was in a bad state when I found him.
Stories like those of Davis are all too common at protests in Kenya. These images are from Nairobi in June 2026, commemorating the second anniversary of 2024 anti-finance bill protests. Back then, thousands of young Kenyans took to the streets to oppose a controversial tax proposal. Some have fears and hopes, but no certainty. Mary Gititia has spent the last 2 years searching for her son Dennis Chege. He vanished during the 2024 protests. Friends say anti-riot police dispersed them as they marched to parliament buildings. No one has ever laid eyes on Chege again. 2 years later, Mary is still searching. She filed a missing persons report immediately after Dennis vanished. The police report is one of the few records she has about his disappearance. She's left alone with her many unanswered questions over her son's whereabouts.
They stole him from me. They took my child away completely. He had committed no crime. And even if he had, we see people who have made mistakes being arrested, charges pressed against them, and then they are either jailed or fined and released. But where is he now? They have robbed me of my son.
Hussein Khalid is the executive director of rights group Vocal Africa. He points a finger of blame at the police.
Not only have the police become a law unto themselves, but they also consider themselves as above the law, that they will break the law and get away with it. You know, it's like Kenya has become a police state where the police can run amok, kill, abduct, and do what they want with absolutely zero repercussions. And this is a very, very dangerous precedent that we're headed towards. Because when people lose faith in the one institution that is supposed to be the bastion of justice, you know, it means people will now take the law into their own hands.
Human rights organizations say these disappearances are not isolated, but a troubling pattern documented after successive protests in Kenya. The government has constantly denied any involvement. To understand the state of the investigations, if any, we turned to the police for answers. Kenya's police spokesperson Mushiri Nyaga issued a clear rebuttal of police involvement in enforced disappearances.
The National Police Service in Kenya does not abduct people. There have been several allegations swirling around, just allegations without proof of those allegations. We cannot go by that. We have documented cases where people have actually self-abducted themselves. And some of these people have even been taken to court, right? So people would have all kinds of, motivations for doing that, but then blame the police or the government for such abductions.
Mary can only hope that her son will one day come home.
Miss Jawai lose hope.
I have not lost hope. But where is my son? Where is he? It has been 2 years. It used to be the case that every few hours he would be calling me.
Davis Lichuma's family hopes for justice, that once he's able to talk again, he can expose the people behind his abduction.
All right. I am now joined by Ernest Cornell Oduor from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Hello and welcome, Ernest, to the program. We've just heard the story of a family still searching for answers after an alleged abduction. Now, Amnesty International has warned of growing intimidation, harassment, and attacks on Kenya's civic space. How serious is the problem of enforced disappearances in Kenya today?
The problem is very, very, very serious. We have evidence of people being arbitrarily arrested by police officers, law enforcement officers, and this arbitrary arrest is caught on camera. Days later, we can't find these people. What am I talking about? I'm talking about what happened on June 25 this year, when 7 activists were arbitrarily arrested by the police officers. When we look for them in all the police stations in Nairobi, we could not find them. That meant that they were not put in any gazetted police station. Later, these 7 were found dumped and torture. And the last contact that they had with police officers. So this is a very serious crime, and it's a tactic that the regime in Kenya is using to persecute its critics.
Right. The thing, though, is that the police keep denying any role in abductions. So, I mean, how does your organization assess this clash between official narratives and the evidence you are documenting on enforced disappearances?
The classic state response in this case is usually denial. At no point will you find police admitting that indeed we enforcefully disappeared this person. The 7 that I've talked about were caught on camera being arbitrarily arrested. What other evidence do you need to say that indeed it is the state that is disappearing these critics?
Right. So what are you going to do with that evidence to really make sure that there's accountability? Because you say you have the evidence.
Well, one of the things is to make sure that there is command responsibilities, to make sure that we pursue the command of the police within the court, instituting a constitutional petition to make sure that those who did the arrest, the arbitrary arrest, those who tortured these critics, and those who commanded these actions are held to account.
Do you trust the system?
The judicial system in Kenya is quite strong and independent, and we believe through a court action, justice is going to be served.
Okay. Now, next year, Kenyans will be voting in elections. We've seen widespread violence in the past. Can next year's vote be free and fair based on all that you see happening now?
I think the stage is being set for violence next year. The state is unleashing goons. Politicians, whether from opposition or backing the government, are also increasingly using an informal repression to suppress their opponents. Now, what this does is that it creates an environment of fear. It creates an environment of violence. It creates a situation where it becomes difficult to challenge the outcome of an election. What we are urging is for the electoral body in Kenya, the IEBC, to make sure that the vote and the result reflects the sovereign will of the people. This does not go to IBC alone. It also extends to other electoral management bodies and institutions that are also responsible for managing elections, be it judiciary, the police, or other independent commissions.
Right. It's interesting that you talked about the goons, because indeed there's been a lot of focus on the so-called goons, hired thugs, and harassments, activists being followed by Subarus with tinted windows. Do we know who is behind this organized campaign of violence and intimidation?
Well, we've said this before, that this is a form of informal repression where states outsources violence to informal groups so that it avoids accountability and delegitimize the cause of those who are on the streets. One of the attacks that I witnessed was at All Saints Cathedral. One of the attackers was arrested, and he confessed on camera that him and other groups who had attacked the church had been sent by a government official. That's not it. The Kenya Human Rights Commission offices in Nairobi was also attacked by goons in 2025. And the intel that we had is that a government official also sent those goons to stop mothers who had congregated at KHRC to ask the regime not to kill their children and to turn up to protest. So increasingly, the testimonies that we are getting from those being arrested as a result of these actions are saying that it is the state, it is the regime that sent them.
Some rights groups say Kenya is beginning to resemble a police state where security officers operate with little accountability. Do you think that description is justified?
I think they are very accurate. How then do you explain a situation where the police are working hand in hand with goons? They're offering them protection. They're giving them cover. How do you explain that? How do you explain a situation where someone, a critic, is dying in a police cell? How do you explain that those who killed people on the street have hardly been held to account, even though there have been enormous evidence to link them to this crime? It is a police state.
Right. So what should happen next, really? I mean, what concrete steps should the Kenyan government take to restore public trust, protect human rights, and ensure no one can simply disappear without accountability?
The regime appeared to be attempted to be clever by forming a panel to compensate victims of police excesses during time of demonstrations. And initially, it had domiciled that function within the executive office of the president, the executive office that is accused of committing this crime. We are happy that a constitutional petition reversed that decision and it returned the function to the rightful office, which is the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. The state can't claim that it wants to compensate victims of police violence during protest, and in subsequent protest, we see even deadly violence being unleashed. What we are asking is for the rule of law to be followed. No more bloodshed, no more killings, no more enforced disappearances. Let the rule of law reign.
Right. Ernest Cornell Oduor from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's dig into this with Mwanase Ahmed, Pan-African Solidarity Network Coordinator. Hello and welcome to the program. Police have denied any involvement in enforced disappearances. Based on what you know, who is behind these abductions?
The police, the DCI, the executive. They also work very closely with the private sector and organizations like Safaricom when needed to surveil and track dissidents. But it is a collaborative effort between the police, the executive and their directives, the DCI, and also, from what we understand, there's a kind of outside of the normal force security service that is working closely to undermine rule of law, disappear, abduct, torture, and they work outside of the system, but they work in close collaboration and protection of the Kenyan security forces.
I mean, you're talking with a lot of confidence, pointing fingers at who you believe is responsible. Why has no one been held accountable?
Rule of law has basically been suspended in East Africa for the majority, but it's only selectively applied generally to the citizenry. But a lot of our duty bearers, mandate holders from the security forces all the way up to the presidential office enjoy impunity and freedom of having to abide by the law. And therefore, we see a lot of footage of the enforced disappearances. It was widely screened. For example, the one that happened in front of Parliament on June 25th. Present at the time was the CCIO and the commander of Nairobi. So when those people were disappeared, put in the back of a lorry, taken away by armed, plain-clothed, masked security officers working in connection with the police under the supervision of the local command, it's very clear that these disappearances have been endorsed and are being protected and state sanctioned. And simultaneously, we then have PS Omolo, from the Ministry of Interior, come out and say that citizens are abducting themselves and they're hiding in their living rooms. Well, it's been very clearly, shown how they were taken and where they were taken, and that they had not been produced in any court or police station. So there's a lot of evidence that points to the same.
Right, and what are you hoping to do with that evidence? I mean, is there, what's your part or way forward now to submit this evidence and hopefully push for accountability?
Ultimately, we're looking at all avenues available. We've already made submissions through the UN Working Group on Enforced Disappearances. We're also working on a constitutional petition because of all of the violations that occurred during that period. We're also looking at individual accountability and initiatives targeting the chain of command. Because there is command accountability. There are people who give a thumbs up and approve or do not intervene or deny state, involvement in these enforced disappearances. So we are looking at a robust legal strategy as to how to hold individuals accountable for their part.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? President William Ruto promised in 2024 to end abductions. 2 years later, we're talking about families that are still searching for their loved ones. Was that just empty words from Ruto, or how do you describe that?
He's the chief mastermind behind the enforced disappearances. And everything that comes out of his mouth is basically empty words. So there was a lot of enforced disappearances throughout 2024. Many people are still missing to date. Other bodies turned up in dams, morgues, and there's, I think, over 30 who have never been found since 2024, if I remember correctly. Right now, we still have 4 people who are also forcibly disappeared more than 3 weeks ago. We've also gone to court. We filed habeas corpus. Kanja and also the DCI boss, Mohammed Amin, were both summoned to come into court and explain as to where they are being held and where they are. They did not appear in court, so they've been given until the 20th to attend in person. So a lot of what comes out of his mouth are empty promises, while simultaneously we know he has had a big hand in directing the continuation of these extrajudicial practices, killings, and disappearances.
Right. Is Kenya becoming a police state? Because that's what some rights groups are saying. What do you say?
I don't think I would describe it as a police state. I think one of the biggest problems at the moment is it's a state where the constitutional freedoms and rights that have been hard won and fought for are disappearing, are being disrespected, not being upheld. The rule of law is being eroded. The rule of law is either selectively applied. So, the citizens, maybe if you're caught stealing a chicken in a community because you're hungry, you'll be sent to prison. Whereas a lot of politicians steal billions and trillions and still continue to enjoy state protection. So the communities in slums tend to have higher police presence, with a lot of harassment, violence, arbitrary arrests, and lots of corruption at that level. And but at large, the police are not really doing their role properly in terms of providing safety and protection to the community and the country at large. So it's not currently a police state, but it looks like it's going to be a state full of organized violence that is working closely with the police if it continues this way.
Right. Can anything restore public trust in the police and reassure Kenyans that no one is indeed above the law?
That would require quite a lot of arrests. The deputy public prosecutor is very quick to approve charges against the citizenry for terrorism, for treason, and other trumped up charges, but there are never any charges that are brought forward against any of the police officers, their commanders, their supervisors, and duty bearers who are actually disrespecting rule of law. So in order to restore faith, we would have to actually see accountability. Accountability for the murders, the extrajudicial killings, the disappearances, use of excessive force, and other crimes being committed. That would be a step in the right direction.
Right. Manasseh Ahmed, Pan-African Solidarity Network Coordinator, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drones are one of the defining technologies of modern warfare. Nigeria is expanding its use of locally developed drones, hoping they will strengthen the fight against insurgents and reduce dependence on foreign technology. Now, engineers in Abuja are building drones designed for Nigeria's terrain.
One of Unicorn's attack drones simulating the damage it can do. The test was clearly a success. Nigeria's military says it plans to expand its cooperation with the company to develop the country's domestic drone capabilities.
Here at Unicorn, they are developing precision drones like this kamikaze drone. It is armed and made for the local terrain. The Nigerian army is now using drones to reach remote areas and target insurgent groups. This technology has changed the way soldiers fight terrorism in Nigeria.
From surveillance to reconnaissance and precision operations, drones have become one of the defining technologies of modern warfare. Terrorists in Nigeria began using commercial off-the-shelf drones for attack as far back as 2024. Nigeria's armed forces have been evolving drone technology in parallel, aiming to keep ahead of the insurgents. At the Directorate of Defense Information, they are tight-lipped about sensitive operational matters. But they did confirm to DW that drones are central to Nigeria's anti-insurgent strategy.
As I'm talking to you, we are using drones in the northeast and also in the northwest to complement the air component. Some of our partners, I'm talking to you, they are in foreign countries. Just I don't want to mention the names, but they are there training on the technology to acquire sophisticated mode drones so that we can curtail the insurgency and to respond fast to destroy score into the enclaves of the bandits and the terrorists.
Unicorn is a private defense company collaborating with Nigeria's Defense Department to reduce that dependency on foreign tech. It has developed the locally produced unmanned aerial systems. Dr. Chuks Ekweme is the company founder.
We are dealing on loitering munition, the kamikaze drones, which are different series according to mission requirements. We have the fully manual, which decision making is in the hands of the pilot, because as much as we are combating insecurity, we ought to be careful to be sure that decisions don't go kind of south, especially civilian casualties.
At the factory itself, drone production is now expected to pick up pace. A technician tells us they can produce up to 3,000 drones per month. 80% of the production materials are locally sourced. The increased interest in drones and their capabilities comes as the war in Ukraine grinds on. Ukraine has led the way developing new drones technology. Many countries are now studying its approach and learning from its experience through defense partnerships. One of the biggest lessons from the conflict is that drones don't have to be expensive to make a real difference on the battlefield. And Unicorn isn't just making drones, it is also developing technology to prevent attacks from enemy drones.
So another thing is our integrated drone defense system. Our jamming system, it can track the drone models and IDs, and then you can spoof, send it to a wrong coordinate and go there to maybe blast or destroy. You can jam it, bring it down, and you can set a no-fly zone.
Attack and defense. Countries like Nigeria increasingly want to build their own military technology instead of relying on foreign suppliers. Efforts here to develop a domestic drone program are part of a bigger global trend that will likely change the way warfare is fought everywhere in the future.
All right, and that's how we wrap it up. For more of our stories, go to dw.com/Africa or visit us on social media. See you next time. Bye for now.